Right now, millions of people are waking up to alarms. They will rush to trains, sit under bright office lights, answer emails, chase deadlines, and spend the best hours of their day doing work they did not choose. And here is the strange part. For most of human history, that was not normal. A Hadza man in northern Tanzania might wake up, eat, rest in the shade, talk for a while, gather a little food, and stop when the work is done. No boss, no spreadsheet, no, just one more task. For almost all of human existence, being human did not mean being busy all day. So how did we get here? And even more important, what did we lose along the way? We have been taught a simple story. That ancient life was brutal, empty, and exhausting. That our ancestors spent every waking hour fighting to survive. That progress came when humans finally escaped that miserable past. But the real evidence tells a different story. Anthropologists who studied hunter-gatherer groups found something shocking. People were not spending all day working. They were spending a surprisingly small amount of time getting food. Not 60 hours a week, not even 40. In many groups, the average was closer to 15 or 20 hours a week. That means the old rhythm of life was not wake up, grind, collapse, repeat. It was work a little, then live. Work a little, then talk. Work a little, then rest. And that changes everything. Because if that is true, then the problem is not that humans are lazy. The problem is that modern life may be asking for something our species was never built to give. But there is another question hiding under that one. If ancient humans were not destroyed by constant labor, then what happened when farming arrived? The farmer's trap. At first, farming looked like a miracle. More food, more control, more people. It seemed like the next great step forward. But the bodies of early farmers tell a darker story. Their skeletons changed. They became shorter. Their bones showed signs of stress. Their teeth were damaged by grain-heavy diets. Their bodies were being pushed harder, not easier. Hunter-gatherers, by contrast, often had stronger bones and fewer signs of repetitive strain. That is not what most people expect. We imagine progress as a straight line upward. But sometimes progress has a hidden price. To grow food at scale, humans had to work the land every day. Weed, harvest, store, defend, repeat. And once that system started, there was no going back, because now there were too many mouths to feed. Too many people depending on fields. Too many villages depending on grain. Farming did not just change food, it changed the meaning of time. Now time could belong to a field, then it could belong to a king, then it could belong to a boss. And little by little, the human day became something that could be owned by someone else. But if people lost freedom, why did civilization keep growing? Because it gave us something powerful. Security. Not comfort, not peace. Security. And that trade changed the entire species. Still, there is one piece of evidence that is even more revealing than bones. Art. The proof was in the cave. If people were struggling just to survive, they would not have had time for beauty. But they did. Deep inside caves, humans painted animals with detail, motion, and shading. Not because the painting would feed them, not because it would protect them, because they could. That matters. A person does not spend days creating beauty if every minute is a desperate fight for survival. Shell beads found in ancient sites tell the same story. Someone walked far to collect them. Someone carefully drilled holes into them. Someone made decoration. That is not the behavior of a species trapped in pure panic. That is the behavior of a species with enough time to care. Even music appears in the record. Ancient flutes carved from bone. Instruments made with patience. Tools for play, not survival. That is one of the most human things ever discovered. When life is not crushing you, you do not only try to stay alive, you make symbols. You make rhythm. You make meaning. And just when it starts to look like the old world was more open and creative than ours, another truth appears. Humans were not only spending time making things, they were spending time talking. And that may be the real center of the story, the social system that replaced jobs. In many hunter-gatherer groups, Conversation was not a side activity. It was the system. People talked in the morning. They talked while moving. They talked while eating. They talked about sickness, hunting, children, jokes, and who had taken too much. There were no police cars, no courtrooms, no HR department. Order was maintained through conversation, reputation, and social pressure. That may sound simple, but it was incredibly powerful. Because if you live in a small group, you cannot survive by acting superior. You cannot become too greedy. You cannot pretend to be above the others. If you do, the group pushes back. One famous story captures this perfectly. Anthropologist Richard Lee gave the Kung a very large ox as a gift. He thought they would be grateful. Instead, they mocked it. They called it skinny. They said the meat would be terrible. Lee was confused. Then he learned the rule. It was called insulting the meat. When someone brings back a huge kill, the group does not praise him too much. They joke. They cut him down. Why? Because no one is allowed to become too proud. No one is allowed to become the center of the world. That is how equality survives. And that is why this way of life feels so different from ours. Modern life is built on status. Ancient life was built on balance. But there is one more twist. Because if the old system was so effective, why did humans give it up? The answer may lie in the people we overlook the most. When people imagine ancient life, they usually imagine the hunter, the man with the spear, the dramatic chase, the big kill. It is a powerful image. But it is not the full story. Hunting is exciting, but it is unreliable. Most hunts do not end in success. A much steadier source of food came from gathering. Roots, tubers, plants. Small, constant contributions that kept the group alive. And often, the people doing this work were women. Among the Hadza and other groups, women contribute a huge share of the daily calories. Not through drama, through consistency. And then there are grandmothers. Older women often continue to gather food, teach children, and support the group in ways that are easy to miss if you are only looking for the hero of the story. This is the grandmother hypothesis. The idea that human life extended beyond reproduction because older women helped the whole group survive. That means old age was not useless. It was valuable, and children were not locked in classrooms preparing for a distant career. They were learning by being around life itself, watching, copying, playing, participating. By the time a child was older, they were already part of the system, not being trained for life, living it. And that leads to the final question. If this was so adaptive, so human, and so deeply built into us, why did we trade it away? The trap of agriculture. Because agriculture did something ancient life could not. It fed more people. That was its power. And that power changed everything. Once farming took over, populations grew. Villages became towns. Towns became states. States needed rulers. Rulers needed workers. Workers needed schedules. And schedules needed obedience. The day that once belonged to the group slowly became something that could be measured, divided, and assigned. This is where the modern job begins. Not in a single invention, not in a single year, but in a long chain of decisions that slowly turned human time into a resource to be managed. We traded freedom for stability. We traded variety for predictability. We traded deep social life for specialization. And we inherited a world that rewards productivity more than presence. That is the trap, because once a civilization can feed more people, it becomes very hard to say no to growth. Even if growth makes life heavier, even if growth makes people more anxious, even if growth asks us to live in ways our bodies never expected, none of this means we should return to caves. We have medicine now. We have clean water. We have vaccines. We have longer lives and fewer children dying young. That matters. But we should not confuse technology with biology. Your body still came from the same ancient design. You still need sunlight. You still need movement. You still need real conversation. You still need rest without guilt. You still need time that is not sold to someone else. That is the part we forget. Our ancestors did not wake up trying to become successful. They did not chase productivity. They did not measure their worth by how exhausted they felt. They lived. They belonged. They were enough. And maybe that is why modern life feels so strange. Because deep down, your body remembers a different world. A world where work was only one small part of being alive. A world where time was not just something to spend, it was something to live inside. So the next time you feel guilty for slowing down, ask yourself a harder question. Are you tired because you are weak? Or because you are trying to live like a machine in a body that was never built to be one? What would your life look like if work only took 3 hours a day?